Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this video is going to be 10 champions that, in my opinion, may seem like they are not very good when you are new to the game, but actually scale very well into the end game. So let's get into it. Alrighty, and just a quick note before I dive into the list to keep in mind that these are just the main 10 that came to mind when I was preparing for this video. So feel free to let me know down in the comments who you think I should have had in this list and who would qualify as someone who might seem like they're not very good but actually scales very well. I always enjoy hearing your opinions. So without further ado, let's get into number 1, and I actually have some funny footage on this one. A good friend of mine, Ash, who has done a lot of gaming content for mobile games like Clash Royale, started making content for Raid Shadow Legends, and when he first did, I was diving into collabs with him and trying my best to help him learn the game and walk him through the first stages when he was really getting into Raid. And now he's an endgame player who knows a lot, but I have a funny clip of him talking about Skull Crusher, who I have as the first champion I'm going to go over on this list of champions that seem like they're bad, but they're actually really good when you get to the end game. So let's cut into that.
You like that, man? I've been grinding. So
yeah,
2 6 stars. I got Kale and Biggin to 6 stars. So I'm loving it. First of all, I want to give you a little feedback on my squad, my A squad, right? So I have Kale and Biggin, who I'm very happy with. But I gotta say, dude, Skull Crusher, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just not appreciative of what he brings to the table. But I'm not loving him. He doesn't put enough damage for me. Like, I'm addicted to the DPS, you know? What do you think about Skull Crusher? Like, should I switch him out, or should I just ride the course?
Well, what you're saying is funny because a lot of early to mid game players are probably going to be like, what is the big deal with counterattack? Like, this doesn't even really seem to matter. But it's kind of like an end game mechanic. Like, when you get to the end game and you're really setting up like specific squads for specific tasks, you're really gonna appreciate that. So yeah, that's just a funny clip that I remembered off the top of my head that would be a good example to use in this video. And that's not to make fun of Ash. I made the same mistake for lots of champions. When I started playing Raid, I was like, why is everybody raving about this champion? I don't seem to get any utility out of them. I thought Allure was terrible. I thought Zargla was really bad. Royal Guard was one of the first epics I summoned, and I was like, I don't know why people are talking about this guy. He doesn't seem that good. So it's definitely a common mistake, and that was just one example that I thought of off the top of my head that I could use for this. So yeah, Skull Crusher, I'll pull him up in the index here. He's the first one I wanted to talk about because he is the only epic in the game that provides ally-wide counterattack, and that is going to be very team-dependent in terms of setting up a specific speed rotation and using champions that can really take advantage of that counterattack. He's not going to do any healing or a lot of damage on his own, so it's going to seem like he's underwhelming, but obviously Skull Crusher is one of the best epics in the game. At number 2, I'm going to talk about Longbeard. It's kind of a similar mechanic to Skull Crusher. Longbeard is very cool. He can be used in blender comps in the arena, can do work in the clan boss if you get the right situation, really good in the Fire Knight if you can burst down that shield with one ability. But similar to Skull Crusher, in the early game, he's not doing any heals or getting any utility, placing buffs on your team or anything like that. Most of his utility is going to come from building a specific team that can take advantage of Horde's Fury and build those specific champs that have really impactful A1s in a specific situation to get a lot of value out of him as a champion. And that leads us into number 3, which is going to be Seer. And Seer is probably the most notorious for being super team dependent. You're not going to get very much value out of Seer until you really get a team that can make her shine. And that's because of her Karma Burn ability that is going to remove all buffs that are on the battlefield and then nuke the enemies based on enemy max HP that scales based on the amount of buffs removed. So my Ice Golem team features her. I place a bunch of buffs with like Battle, Khazar, and stuff like that, and then she nukes the waves, and I can get to the boss in like 15 or 16 seconds. It's very consistent. It's every time, and I've got a specific rotation set up to take advantage of those Seer nukes and crank out the DPS to burst through those waves as fast as possible. And I figured, why not, while we're here, I will show you what I'm talking about in terms of Seer being insane. You will see how I've got an endgame team set up here that'll place a bunch of buffs, and then my Seer will come through, hit for 200,000 something damage, sometimes 300,000 something, and she will blow those waves down super easily, and I will be at the boss in 13 seconds, just like that. At number 4, I'm going to talk about Xavia. Xavia is an amazing champion. I really love her. She's great for speed farming. She's great in a lot of different situations. The reason I'm putting her on this list is because when I was in the Gold Rush competition, I summoned Xavia, and I thought that was going to be a huge pull, but I actually wasn't able to get much value out of her. The main reason I did really well in that competition was because I was lucky enough to get Krisk on my squad. Xavia really was just a waste of time in terms of me investing her in a competition where I'm rushing to gold 4, because poisons do not do that great in the early game anywhere besides the clan boss, because things don't have a lot of hit points. And if you don't have good crit rate and really good gear and a specific team set up around her to build up a bunch of poisons that she can then detonate based on a very specific rotation of champions, you're not going to see a bunch of value from Xavia. And also, an unfortunate thing about Xavia is going to be that she's going to detonate poisons if you use her on auto in the clan boss. So you're going to want to use her because you're like, oh, she places all these poisons, I want to use her in the clan boss. But then when she detonates with her deadly catalyst and those poisons don't scale and have time to sit on the clan boss and get their full effect, you're kind of gimping your team and not doing your full amount of damage, unfortunately. So she's one you kind of have to manual if you're going to be using her in a clan boss situation in the early to mid game. Which brings me to Elenero, which is kind of a similar mechanic to Xavia. Elenero and Xavia are the two detonators, or at least the most famous detonators, because of the combustibility that is similar to Xavia's deadly catalyst. And Elenero is thought of to be the weaker version of the two. Xavia is used a lot more often, especially in dragon runs and those high-end speed farming teams. But Elenero can definitely do the job as well if you set up the right team around her. She can detonate those poisons and really nuke down those enemy waves. At number 6, I'm going to talk about Sepulchre Sentinel. Now, she is an amazing epic. I actually use her in my Ultra Nightmare Clan Boss team. She's a staple of my team because I've got the rotation set up to have her block the stun, and she also increases the defense of my entire squad and places a reliable decrease attack on the clan boss. So extremely good champion, like a lot of the other champions on this list. That's why they're on this list, is because they are very endgame viable. It's just at the beginning, she may not seem like she's super good because you have to get her a lot of speed in order to get this up pretty often, because the cooldown is pretty big on her increased defense and the block debuffs. And then she doesn't really have a whole lot of AoE debuffing utility. Like the A1, it's not AoE decrease attack, it's just one enemy, so it's not going to seem super impactful until you get a specific team, like a clan boss scenario, built around her to make her shine. And 7th, we're going to talk about one of the most famous champions in Raid, and that is Coldheart. Now, Coldheart is a champion that scales off of enemy max HP on her most impactful ability, which is the Heartseeker here. Now, the thing about Coldheart and why she scales so good in the end game is because you need really, really good gear on Coldheart. She needs good crit chance. You need to get that 70% to make sure the Heartseeker is landing. You need really good accuracy to make sure she's landing the turn meter reduction, and she scales with enemy max HP. So obviously, as the enemies get tougher, as the enemies in those dungeons get more and more HP, she's gonna start hitting for 2 million in like those spider runs and scale super well as you move into the end game. And under that same thought process, we're going to move into Royal Guard, who is super famous for his takedown ability here on the A2, which is actually similar to Coldheart, but it's AoE. So it's going to scale with enemy max HP, but AoE. Super cool ability for speed farming endgame dungeons. Royal Guard is extremely common in those endgame spider, dragon, potion keep teams that want to burst through not only the waves, but also the bosses as fast as possible. But I remember he was one of the first 2 or 3 epics in the game that I got when I was a new player in Raid, and I didn't even really use him that much. I was like, I don't see what the hype is. He doesn't hit super hard, and he's not really doing a whole lot. He's hitting one enemy and placing decreased defense, and it's not even consistent. It's not 100%. His base speed is low. I was like, I don't really get the hype around this guy. But then once I got to the end game and built some specific teams around him, I was like, yeah, okay, Royal Guard's amazing. I actually used 2 max out Royal Guards. I've got a video where I talk about how using 2 Royal Guards can really do some insane things in terms of speed running some runs. So he's a very fun champion, but he does scale more towards the end game. And just like Royal Guard, at number 9, I'm going to talk about Septimus for basically the same reason as Royal Guard. He's another champion that scales up enemy max HP, so I don't have to tell you why. I've already explained that a few times, why that is so much better in the end game. And he also needs insane gear. He needs lots of crit, lots of crit damage to be able to snowball and do a lot of work as a champion. Let me show you really quickly my spider team that takes advantage of Septimus. It's super cool. You can use him in the end game to really burst down the spider. I actually use 2 Septimus and 2 Royal Guards, so this is a good opportunity to talk about why both of these champions that I went over at number 8 and number 9 can scale so insane in the end game. You'll see here my spider team is a 100% win rate. It's consistent on auto, and it bases off of Royal Guard and Septimus smashing that spider down with those abilities that scale super well to do the 11-second spider runs. And last but not least, at number 10, I'm going to go over Allure. Now, Allure I also had for a really long time. She was probably one of the first 10 or 15 epics I summoned, and I just never used her. I didn't think she was going to be that great. Now, Allure is super gear intensive, and once you build her and get her built right, in a right squad to take advantage of her, she is insane. She's got an A1 that does so much turn meter manipulation. The 3 times at random that decreases by 25%. If you get her in really high speed, she can basically make sure the bosses never get a turn. She's super famous in the Fire Knight. Once you break the Fire Knight's shield, which she's good at because she hits it 3 times, now the Fire Knight can never get a turn again. She's going to keep going through. If her speed is significantly higher than the Fire Knight, she's going to keep going in a rotation and nuking that turn meter of the Fire Knight, and he's never going to take his shield back up. She can do the same thing in other dungeons where the boss won't even get a turn. I use her in like the Spirit Keep and the Magic Keep to make sure that they never get a turn to both heal and place their shield. So Allure, extremely good, but like I said, extremely gear intensive because she needs basically every stat in the game. She needs high accuracy, really high speed, and then she also needs crit rate to make sure that this turn meter reduction is landing because it only happens on crits. And she's also an attack champion, so you're gonna need attack on her if you want her to do any damage. But yet she's also kind of a glass cannon because her base defense is super low at 793, and also her base HP is 14k. So her base toughness stats are extremely low, and you have to get good toughness on her or she's just going to fall over and she'll never make it to the boss in order to be able to get that value in reducing their turn meter. And it's tough to get her to that point because her base stats are low. So extremely gear intensive, but the cool thing that offsets that is you don't really need any books on her. She's very good without any books, just really gear intensive to get that value out of her. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. I had a lot of fun theory crafting, and I like to do fun lists like this every week or two and just drive some fun discussion about, you know, a certain way I'm feeling about champions in the game. And just to rehash, we've got Skullcrusher, Longbeard, Seer, Zavia, Elenero, Sepulchre Sentinel, Coldheart, Royal Guard, Septimus, and Allure as my top 10 champions that may seem like they're not that good at first glance, but they really scale super well and do a lot of work in the end game once you get good gear on them. So definitely let me know champions that I missed out that you think would have been a good addition to this list. I enjoy reading your opinions, and as always, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.